Dr. Reddick. I hope you're doing well. I want to thank you for allowing me to do your 2D and 3D screen. We're going to need to repeat your 3D screen. You're slightly off the camera, and I'm not sure if I can trust the data or not. And so for right now, I'm just going to do your 2D screen, and in the future, we'll repeat the 3D part of it. All right. And so when I do the 2D screen, I'm looking for 12 hitting inhibitors that impact your power, contact, as well as your efficiency. And so I'm going to be drawing a couple of lines, looking at different things, and let's see how you do. So the first thing I'm looking for is if you have a sway. And so many players have a negative move, which you have, so we didn't quite get the full, but you're going back. And the key thing is we don't want that knee to cross that line. All right, so no evidence of a sway. Next thing we look for is posture, and what we refer to as loss of posture. So when you come out of the negative move and you start going forward, what we want to see is a forward tilt of the body where you're attacking the ball. And so what we do is we draw a line kind of here to the middle of your waist. So we get about 89, 88 degrees. So there's a little bit of forward tilt. Actually, I'm going to take that back just slightly. So actually, I want to get it right before, so negative move. Let me go back all the way here. All right. So, all right, let me start over again. So what we're going to do is, as you finish your negative move, I'm going to draw a line between your eye and kind of the middle of your waist, kind of eyeballing a little bit. And you can see there is a slight forward tilt there. I'm going to take you to the ready position or toe touch position. And we still want to see that forward lean. All right. And we're probably getting, which way is it? So we still have, I would say, a forward lean ever so slightly. And then once you get the heel plant, we actually want you leaning slightly backwards. And so you're pretty the same kind of throughout. And so we do want to see some adjustment. And specifically what I'm looking for is, forward lean, and then reverse lean. So this is a little bit exaggerated, but that's what we're talking about. Attack mode, attack mode, attack mode, and then weight shift. Okay. And so I'm going to say there's a slight loss of posture, more so because there's no change in the posture. Okay. Next thing we look for is dead hands. And so this one is, as you go through your negative move all the way to toe touch, we would like to see stretching of the arms. So some people will start with the bat a little bit closer to them, say like closer to their neck, and then extend their arms out on that negative move to the toe touch. And what that does, it creates an elastic stretch, and that stretch creates energy. And so when you have energy, you're able to transmit that into the bat. So when we see dead hands, meaning no separation of the hands from the body, we say there's a loss of power there. All right. And so on that negative move, and I'll double check on the other view just to make sure because we didn't miss a frame here. But based off of this, I'm seeing dead hands. Next thing we're looking for is loss of base. So basically, when you get in that toe touch position, you want that back heel down and that knee pointing out. And so here, if we call that toe touch, I would say that front knee is pointing out pretty good. Let me see how you go to, we go to heel plant. Definitely turns out there, the rotation. So I would say no loss of base on this one. Next thing we look for to see if you're hanging back. And what we look for here is weight shift, all right? So I'm gonna draw this line. And what we wanna see is when we go from negative move all the way to contact of the ball, we don't want that foot going behind the line there, all right? Now for you, there's a little bit of camera movement, front foot slides. Let me see here. So even though your foot does go back, it's actually in a good position and it's going forward, all right? And so this one may just be, where do I draw the line? So if I draw the line here, and then I see your foot go, let's see, there's a little bit, but typically most of the foot will fall behind the line and your foot is moving forward. So I'm gonna say you have pretty good weight shift. Next thing I'm looking for is what we call a gate swing. So we don't want your elbow to get stuck on the hip, all right? So what we do is see the stripes on your shorts there. We just want to make sure that elbow passes through and it does just fine, so it's not getting stuck on that hip. Next thing we look for is flying elbow. And so what we don't want is the elbow outside the hands at the toe touch position. And you do pretty good there. And then once we get here, you have good alignment. So you're whipping your hands through and not pushing them through, which is wonderful. And then we look for what we call dumping the barrel at toe touch. We basically want that bat in front of the hands at that point, okay? So mainly what I'm seeing is the loss of posture. And, oh boy, what did I say? I said loss of posture and the dead hands. And so I think based off your physical screen, well, you did good on the separation test, and the separation test is when you had the bat kind of next to your neck and you stretched it out to the side. So you have good shoulder motion, and then loss of posture really is more of a technique. So I would say those two are really kind of a technique issue, and I think those can be fixed or addressed because your movement screen was not bad at all in regards to those particular movements. Now, one thing, as I said, the 3D was kind of questionable because you were partly out of the screen. But one of the things we're looking for is what we call X factor. And X factor is the separation of your upper body from your lower body. Now, this isn't the best kind of 3D, but if I draw a line between your shoulders here, and really, if I kind of draw a line between your hips, you can see there's not much separation between the lines. Not so much talking about the space in between, but what would be, say, a separation if, you know, the angle was different on there, all right? And so when we're not quite seeing that, and really they're kind of in the same plane. And again, this is not the best way to evaluate it, but when we see things on the 3D, we go back to the 2D to see if we can identify it. And so, and as you go through, we expect the hips to go forward, you know, towards the ball. And so not really seeing a whole lot of separation between on that backswing. And so your X factor is important because when you get that coil, the separation of your shoulders and your pelvis, kind of think of it, you know, you're wringing out a towel. And so when you do that, you're generating energy. And then when you uncoil, you generate power. And so because of that X factor, I suspect is not very large, there's a bit of a loss of power there. And we'll also see about your sequencing, because what we want to see on the sequencing is firing of the hips first, then the thorax, then the shoulders. If the current 3D is correct, let me just go to that. This is this top part here. So if this is correct, which I'm not sure it is, but it does somewhat fit, what we want to see is this orange line peak first, which it does, followed by the green line, then the red line. So what it's showing here is that your hips are going first, but then your arm is taking the lead before the shoulders get there. And so you would say, okay, good, you have good hip firing, but actually what we also look for is the velocity of the hip firing. And if you look here, the velocity, which you may not appreciate, but it's on the lower end. We actually want this hump where the velocity, where I'm at right now, the orange, to be higher, followed by the green, then followed by the red. But again, we'll repeat this to make sure that it's doing okay. But anytime you swing as a unit, meaning your whole body together, it's not unusual to see that type of graph where you're not really creating any velocity. So we're going to go to the rear view. And what I'm going to do here is we're going to take you to positive move, and I'm going to draw a line down your backside there. And what we're going to do is have you go through contact. And what I don't want you to do is come off that line. So when you come off that line, your hips are going towards the ball, and you decrease this space in between the ball and your hips, so you give less room for your hands to move. So if someone threw you an inside pitch, because your hips go forward, you could easily get jammed. And so what we want to do is to be able to address that. Some of that has to do with your pelvic rotation, meaning getting your hips out of the way and rotating around. And you did have some limitation on the physical exam or on the movement screen with getting your hips rotating properly. Now, when I grabbed your shoulders, you improve. So what that means is the rotation piece is there, the mobility piece, but you're unable to stabilize. And that just goes back to being able to separate your upper body from your lower body. And those are things that we'll work on. The next thing we look for is casting of the hands. So we take it to the toe touch position. We want those hands inside the elbow, and then take it to heel plant. And we still want those hands inside the elbow, so maybe slightly out. So if we say elbow is here, hands here, pretty close, but I have to be picky. So I'm going to say you're slightly casting your hands there. All right. And so, and again, sometimes this will vary depending on who's doing it. So we say toe touch, hands are definitely inside, but heel plant, kind of depending on where we call it, we still want those hands inside or in alignment. I would just say you're slightly ahead. You're just slightly ahead. All right. And so that's it for now. Overall, pretty good swing there. Didn't find too many inhibitors, but we will need to repeat the 3D part. I already know we probably need to work on your X factor, getting more thoracic and I should say shoulder thoracic separation from your pelvis to help generate more power. But I think with a few technique changes, you'll see some improvements rather quickly. All right. Thanks a lot. And we'll be catching up with you soon. Bye-bye.